Tom Lee, who has been trying to remind people that inflation is going to roll over quicker than you think, Tom. Does JOLTS point to that?
It certainly does. I'd put this in the camp that inflation's on a glide path lower because with lower job openings, a lot of anecdotal evidence that it's been easier to hire and even new job postings have lower wages. That really takes the wind out of someone saying wage pressures are going to keep inflation high. So there's a lot of data this week, but I do think that by the end of the week, we're going to really see a picture of inflation falling faster than consensus expects.
What is the lag between those kinds of prints and the kind of Fed rhetoric that would back it up for equities?
That's a great question, Carl, because we've had some really soft inflation readings for some time and only recently have FOMC members who are very data dependent acknowledging inflation's softer. I think markets are also unconvinced because, if you look at Fed fund futures, there's many expecting a hike in November. I think that the probability now is at 48%. I think that's going to get towards zero if we get the soft inflation we expect. And I think that's why this week is critical. It could change a lot of Fed members' minds.
But Tom, a lot of people read last week in the events at Jackson Hole as being, more hawkish, having a hawkish bias. You disagree with that?
I'm not at Jackson Hole, and I can only go off what I'm reading and from Powell's speech. But to me, there's a huge anchoring bias that I think at the start of this year, the majority of economists and pundits are hawkish and read everything as if it's a hawkish statement. I kind of looked at Jackson Hole, and I thought it was actually a real validation that if inflation comes in soft, the Fed's going to change its view. To me, that's a risk-on interpretation, but you're right. A lot of people saw that and are staying hawkish.
Risk on where? The reason I ask is because we've seen pockets of risk pop up, even despite some of the weakness in August, namely just the overall crowding in the Magnificent Seven that hedge funds have been, kind of piling into that trade, even more of a tilt than they have historically. Is that a concern to you for the overall market sentiment?
Yes and no. I think people overstate the impact of these 7 stocks. What we have to keep in mind is, one, if anyone's going to be buying equities globally, the U.S. stock market remains the most liquid. As you know, outside the U.S., it's pretty much a small cap world anyways, small and mid cap. And the 7 largest stocks actually have great fundamentals. Not looking at NVIDIA's stock price reaction, look at the guidance changes. So to me, those are core stories to the U.S., the technology leadership, pretty central to both generative AI's future and the inflation problem. I think they're important stocks. I wouldn't be surprised if they continue to gain into year-end.
Well, there's one of them right now that's actually in the green for the first time since it reported those incredible earnings. Any takeaway at all from you, Tom, in terms of NVIDIA's performance after, again, what was that just blowout quarter in guidance?
Well, it was disappointing to see good results and a stock sell-off. So it told us a lot about people really being too long into that earnings result. But I think in the aftermath, the fact that the stock is stabilizing, rising, shows you that there's a lot of people that did sell NVIDIA during its correction in July into August. If someone's trying to bet on the future of generative AI and AI, there are just a small number of companies, and NVIDIA is obviously one of the key ones.
What does it say in terms of how much of just the overall AI hype is really baked into the market, though, at this point? Obviously a lot of this, and NVIDIA is kind of the anomaly here in terms of how much of it is actually material to earnings at this point in time. But what does it tell you about kind of just the overall modeling that's being done on Wall Street with regard to figuring out kind of the overall trades on some of these names?
There's definitely hype. Hype accompanies every major cycle. When I did wireless, there was a lot of hype in the early days of the internet too. But of course, a lot of that ends up underestimating the outcome and the leadership of a handful of companies. So, there's a lot of books. I actually am certain that there's going to be a lot of demand for AI. It's pretty relevant today because of labor shortages and the need to actually improve processes and actually improved judgment. So I do think there's a real future there. But you're right, there's a lot of hype. I mean, I'm not sure it should be additive to the overall stock market. There'll be winners and losers.
Yeah, we'll see. Maybe some of the presentations from a variety of vendors in the next few weeks, Tom, can give us more grounding in reality when it comes to use cases. Thanks, Tom. Good to see you. Tom Lee.
Thanks. Good to see you.
As we